All right, we're live. All right, wait for some people to show up, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Cool.
How was your spend this week? A lot of deals. Did you find any good deals?
Yeah, I've it's interesting. I was telling my significant other, but like I'm at this point that I don't have any like anxiety about. I used to feel kind of the sense of I need to like I'm just at a point that I know I can spend whatever I need to spend on good stuff. And that's a very good feeling. Granted, it took me 4 years to get here, but like I know if you tell me a reasonable amount that I have to spend, I will spend it. I think a lot of that just comes with obviously the time and the reps, but I've seen so many sales and so many cycles of sales and products that it's like at any given time now, a certain percentage is going to click. And then I'm always learning and adding to that, right? So what about you?
Yeah, I didn't spend a ton, but there's definitely more to spend this week than say like last week. But
Yeah.
I also have like you said, we've been selling for so long. I do have like a solid chunk of replens that I know I can buy basically if not every week, like at least once a month. So
Yeah.
I feel like if I'm not spending on new stuff, I at least have some replens to purchase to increase the spend for the week. So that
Yeah.
helps.
No, totally. Yeah.
Armand, how's it going? Patricia, thanks for joining.
What's up?
All right, so we've been in for a couple minutes. I think that's good enough to get started. We got some people watching. So, Jonathan, you want to introduce the topic for this week?
Yeah, I think something that's very important. We'll talk about Amazon lending or just in general loans, credit card debt. I think a lot of things that you hear and people get real excited early on is scaling and maybe with a lack of capital, how you do it. And so, from firsthand experience, I did take an Amazon loan. I want to share, and we'll get into it. Why I did that. I've now since paid it off fully, and now I've had time to reflect and what I would do differently and what I would say to those early on in the process, pros, cons, and just kind of our thoughts on it, because it definitely is a big part of this game. Because starting on Amazon is a pretty low barrier to entry. And a lot of people get into this as their first like business or entrepreneurial endeavor. And a lot of
It's
noise
cash
with credit cards and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's important to talk about.
Yep, and we're not financial professionals, but we
Yeah.
have both taken out Amazon loans. We both have rewards credit cards that we utilize in our business. So if you guys do have questions, we'll try to answer them as best we can. Like Jonathan mentioned, we're going to talk about the Amazon lending because I think it's like a big part of it. The credit using debt to scale, because again, it is a cash intensive business. And if you don't have a ton to work with, there are options for scaling a little bit faster. But again, it's not fully necessary to take on debt to be able to grow this business. So
Right.
we'll probably state that fact like multiple times throughout the call here. But there's definitely some great options out there for scaling a little bit quicker than you would with just using your cash, buying inventory, letting it sell, getting that cash back, reinvesting that into new inventory. There are much faster ways than that. So that's what we'll get into. So
yeah,
you want to talk about your Amazon loan, why you took it. I can do that. I can basically talk about my same experience after you go.
Sure. I'll give you the start to end on Amazon loan, and then we'll come back to, because I definitely want to talk about, like you were just mentioning scaling. And I have ways that basically I would suggest that you can avoid taking on more risk and more capital, not knowing what I know now. But we'll start with the loan part of it. So for me, I had been doing Amazon for about 3 years. So retail arbitrage, then pretty much cold turkey when I moved states to online arbitrage. But to give some context, that's going from like spending 10 grand a month to spending like 30 grand a month to achieve the same profit, basically, right? And so Amazon's very cash intensive. I had got to a skill level I felt pretty comfortable with. And to me, it came down to if I have the time and the skill set, but not the capital, if I take this money, can I make more than the interest every month? And to me, it was a no-brainer, right? And so actually, I took a $70,000 Amazon loan, which I remember thinking at the time, there's no way I'll ever spend this, but I can always just pay it back prematurely. And that was I was wrong. Like it's such a cash intensive business. And
just to clarify, it was
Yeah.
a loan. It wasn't a line of credit.
Correct. I took a straight up loan. Yep.
Yep.
And so to me, I did the math, let's say that I borrowed 70 over the course of the loan. It's a short, their loans are short term. To me, I didn't have to give like personal sign off or anything. So, worst case, they're taking my inventory and, doomsday, right? But to me, for a round number, if I'm borrowing 70, I have to pay back 75, 76 over 9 months or a year. I don't even remember. So basically, I had to make an additional $500 profit to cover the nut of the interest of the loan. Everything after that would be profit, right? So to me, that was a no-brainer because I had the skill set and the time, and so it made sense to me. And so I took it, and ballpark, I think I was paying like $7,500 a month to them, and I was growing it, and my skill set got better, and I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot, but what really opened my eyes was that I didn't want to just towards the end of this, I was like, I'm paying them $7,500 a month. And I'm also pulling out money how I see fit for some bills or lifestyle, whatever. I was like, when I don't have to pay them back anymore, I'm just going to pay myself that $7,500 a month because literally nothing else is changing. And that's kind of what I'm doing this year. So it was kind of good in the sense of like, it helped me level up. It helped me learn with more capital quicker. But I didn't do this from day one. I had put like 3 years into it, and to me, it was just I think I'm responsible, very financially. Like, don't overextend myself. And again, I had 3 years of proven history. I knew I could spend more. I needed capital. This made sense to me, and that's kind of why I took it. And right now, it's paid off, and I don't have one, and I don't know that I'll ever take one again because I don't want to always scale forever type of thing,
Yeah, that's a good point because at some point, you're the reason you're taking on more debt is to scale. And if you're at a point where you can pay yourself and your business is profiting and you can save for taxes and whatever other expenses you're going to have, and you can cover all that with the current profits you're making, right? With your current revenue, like the end goal isn't to just scale to infinity. Like you can be very happy making 10K a month where it's, that's your gross margin or gross profit. And then after expenses and everything, and you pay yourself, you still make, 1,000 to 3,000 a month. And that can be reinvested in inventory, and you can scale, that way if you want to. Otherwise, if you're happy with a consistent spend goal, your cash flow will improve if you aren't always scaling too. That's another big thing that I don't think a lot of people realize. You're going to be really cash poor when you are trying to scale. That's where the loan comes, is actually like super nice. But yeah, it's you get to a point where you're buying so much inventory and all of your free cash is in inventory. You just don't have money to pay yourself or pay, whatever. So yeah, that's a big part of it. Anything else you wanted to mention on the loan side of things, or otherwise I can talk about my experience as well?
Yeah. As far as the process itself, it was easy. It was simple, very, very quick. I don't get caught up on what the percentage was. It was just a numbers thing to me. And for the ease of it, super, super simple process. I think just the biggest thing, and even you're using the terms, is that I would really love for people to stop thinking that scaling is always a good thing, right? Growing your profits, great. Growing for the sake of growing is not always good. And if you don't know what you're doing, I would much rather tell you become really good at sourcing, increase your margins, and now you don't need more capital to achieve the same profit goal, right? I think I didn't really come to fully realize this until the last couple of years when I've become really confident in my Amazon arbitrage ability. I'm like, this advice of just scaling to scale is busted. Like, it's horrible.
Yep.
The only way you're going to cash flow, as you were talking about, basically you pull money out from day one, or you finally get to a spending plateau and you stay at that number consistently while not sacrificing your margin. Otherwise, you keep growing and scaling and scaling. And by the way, you're going to make mistakes along the way as you do this. So like if you're spending more money more freely on crappy inventory, you're digging yourself a real big hole. So like I wouldn't take it until you really know that you're a good sourcer, knowing what I know now.
Yep, exactly. And you also have to consider, for those of you like considering an Amazon loan, if you do take the money and maybe you're taking it because, Q4, December, you can spend an extra 10 grand. So you take a $10,000 loan. If the payback period is 6 months and you owe, right, let's just say 2,000 a month with interest, when you're on month 5, month 6, like, are you still generating enough revenue in those months where that 2,000 isn't putting you in the negative now, where you made the profit in December, but then January was a big pullback month, February still a pullback month. And then all of a sudden, it kind of offsets, like you made more in December, but less in February than you normally would. And now the loan didn't really benefit you as much. So I think that's one of my biggest, I guess, cons of taking a loan. So I took an Amazon loan, I want to say 9-ish months ago. It was around $14,000. I think it was the first loan Amazon offered me. Again, I have 2 sourcing VAs, so I'm at the point where I felt confident that we could hit that, hit our spend goals to make that worth it. And I think I'll be done paying it off in April or March, one of the two. Yeah, and I think it's just having access to that capital. It really, for me, I'm setting like weekly spend goals for myself. So I know what I need to hit, and then to have this extra capital, if I have the leads from my VAs or sourcing myself, I'm able to spend more. And then the goal is to just consistently spend more. So yeah, I think it's a great option. I think you just really want to make sure that if you're using it to scale, make sure that you are able to sustain that scalability. Because if you do like if you're stuck at 30K and then you take a loan to help you spend more to hit 50K, and then all of a sudden, you can't find enough leads to maintain that 50K, and then your profits are down. I don't know. Yeah, it's just kind of like, you just, like you said, you just really want to understand the numbers, make sure that it makes sense. And it can really help you. I mean, it's definitely, there's a ton of pros to it. I mean, it can really help you, get that extra spend, because a lot of people are stuck. Like, I can only spend 10 grand a month. Then I got to wait for my cash flow to catch up. This is a big cash flow injection. So it can be super beneficial depending on, especially if you're taking it for, I mean, would you say that like taking it in maybe like August or early December is more beneficial than just taking it randomly in, a February or June or something, because of the, back to school season or the December season? I mean, there's definitely more leads to go around, more money to spend during those times of year. Would you kind of recommend if anything, those are better times to be taking on extra debt?
I think that would be very secondary to me. Like, if you're not experienced, like myself, at this point, if I were to take one, I would strategically take it probably before Q4, whenever I want to really, if I decide like, hey, I want to spend 200 grand come Q4, right? Well,
Yep.
yeah, because I don't want to pay interest prematurely, type of thing. But I think there's always good inventory to buy. And when I think about when we talk to people, and something I've come to realize too is like, I'm generally speaking to the 99% of people. 99% of people aren't spending 50K plus on inventory a month. And because of that, I think that Amazon loans are such an easy, low-hanging fruit. I think that what most people should do is pretend that's not even an option, and really put your back against the wall. And how do I find better profit, right? If that means integrating some retail arbitrage for higher margins or whatever, especially early on, like, like you don't fully understand Keepa, right? Like it takes a year, or it takes a long time to really understand what you're
Sometimes
buying.
years, sometimes years.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have such easy access to more money, it can lead to spending a lot more money on bad inventory quickly. Whereas then if you kind of push yourself against the wall, say, listen, I'm not taking outside money until I prove to myself that I can repeatedly find 40% ROI and above products, which by the way, it's out there 100%. Like I kind of strive for that myself. So I'm not just saying that as a number. Um, I don't think it should be a first resort. And just to give like a round number, these are inflated, but just because easy math, if I spend 50K a month at 20% ROI, so $10,000 profit, right? Or I spend 25K a month at 40% ROI. It's the same amount of profit and it requires $25,000 less. And like to go from 20% ROI to 40% ROI doesn't take double the amount of time, in my opinion, once you get good. There's a learning curve for sure. But like that's just a really good example to paint the picture of, wow, that's a huge gap, less money that you have to have, less risk, no interest, and it forces you to be a better sourcer. So to me, for one, A, B, and C should be work on your sourcing, then worry about the capital to go from there.
Yep. I 100% agree. I've seen some of your Instagram posts about that exact comparison, spending the certain ROI, getting a certain ROI versus another. And that's, I mean, I didn't know that kind of stuff, when I was first starting out. So for those of you, yeah, who think like that just seems impossible to achieve, like you don't need the capital if you are able to find just higher ROI items, because they're definitely out there. I mean, I'm buying, some things that are 35% ROI, and then, I'll go around and find an 80% ROI item. And then you average those out and we're sitting above 40%. So you can definitely find that stuff out there. And again, the lending, we keep saying the lending's great. The option is great, but like you said, pretend it's not there if Amazon's offering you one, and just know that you need to be able to spend on inventory consistently and know that you can find leads if you need to in a pinch before you're, taking on something that kind of puts a hard deadline to your business. Like it is definitely, I mean, if you have just cash in your bank account, you don't owe on credit cards, you don't have a high expenses on a bunch of things, you can spend that money whenever you want. But when you have, a loan that you have to pay off at a certain time, there's more pressure added, and you need to be able to perform and provide to get that loan paid off. So if you're not at that stage, you're just adding a ton of risk to the business, and then it'll make you make rash decisions, right? Because you just have to spend this to get ROI back so you can, get payouts from Amazon's that are larger to pay off the loans. Like it's just a bad cycle to be in. So you want to make sure you are fully prepared, in your business to take on that.
Yeah, and something I just thought of as well, I wanted to chime in with. It takes a while to kind of figure out how quickly you get your money back, right? You can watch a video that says plan on 2 months, right? But like now that I have 4 years, I can look back. I've been pretty consistent on my spend. Okay, every month I'm averaging this type of deposits to my account, right? So I have a good idea. But if you go from 0 to 100, or like a $50,000 loan or whatever you get, and you get excited and you spend it all, it doesn't mean it's all coming back to you by the time next credit card cycle comes around. Like, so even if I did get a loan, I would truthfully, and this is for scaling in general, growing in general, something that I've learned when it comes to this type of business, you want to, in my opinion, you want to stagger. So let's say you're spending 10 grand a month right now and you get a 40K loan. I'd probably go to, even if you went to 20K, then 25, then 27, then 30, right? Like don't just go 10 to 50, because it's really, it's such a learning curve. Not just on that, you're going to have more customers touching products, communication, reviews, returns, maybe more prep and pack. Like Amazon does not get rich quick, but you can start to snowball pretty quickly if you want to. But like don't shoot yourself in the foot by forcing it too quickly. Give yourself 6 months to stagger it and see what happens, right?
Yeah, the slow growth is I think it's almost paramount to being successful, because if you go from, right, even if you're sitting at 30, 40K and you just, take a big loan and now the next month you're at 70K, that's great and all, but what's going to happen the month after, right? If you spent all your cash flow and now you have a bunch of inventory sent in and you're waiting for it to sell, and maybe you bought some items that weren't as good because you just wanted to spend it and they're taking longer to sell. Now the next month could be a big pullback.
Yeah.
You did great, you did 70K, then the month after, now you're lower than where you were before you took the loan. And then it's like kind of the cycle of up and down. And it's just, you just really want to understand the numbers and before diving in.
By the way, I did forget to mention, although I never like to bank on cashback like Rakuten and credit card stuff, and we'll talk about credit cards a little, that was another factor of me. If I spend X amount of this loan every month, in that 5%, let's call it, with Rakuten and credit cards, that alone should have paid the interest. So like, I think the number was, if I spend 10 grand a month, that would be, I think $500 in cashback rewards, which would cover my interest, right? So when I was factoring that, I mean, I don't like to advocate for that, but for my specific situation, I was like, okay, this is kind of a no-brainer, like there's not a whole lot to lose.
Yep. Great point there. And we can get into that a little bit further. Let's answer some questions here. Seth, did you take Paraffin? Maybe that means Amazon loan or the low interest lender options? We both took the Amazon loan, which I think my interest rate was 12% APR. But again, it wasn't even a full year, so I didn't pay all that much interest. Chris asks, any Bolo/FBM discords or programs you suggest? Jonathan, you have a Bolo, or not a Bolo, you have a leads list, don't you?
Not at the moment. So long story, which I can touch upon. But
no worries.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple like free discords out there. I know. I mean, we don't personally have any like discords or programs, but our YouTube, there's so much free content out there. And what I think is funny, and I've actually done this myself. Look at some of the big creators in the Amazon space and go back to some of their earlier videos, because they didn't know what they shouldn't or shouldn't be putting out on the internet, right? Like maybe they're giving away a little bit more than they would realize now, like, oh, that's a little bit too good of information. So just look back at some of their old videos. There might be some like really good tips in there that they just wanted to share because they were scaling and they found this helpful. And again, both of us have YouTube channels that we post plenty of good Amazon content on. So that's a good starting point.
I would say, I don't know about FBM specifically. If you're not following, she goes by the other Alexa. She's an incredible seller. I think they have like an RA group, which I imagine would have some FBM component. I think they have a free group. Cody does Amazon, I think, has a Bolo group. To me, he's very reputable. I like him a lot. I think those are two accounts worth checking out. And if they're offering something, it's probably worth its weight in gold.
Yep. Chris just reiterated, looking for fast flips, then lean into replens. Yeah. The thing about those, again, this is another cash flow aspect. If you are merchant fulfilling items, you're going to get your cash flow back or cash back on those items a little bit faster than you would FBA. So, that's another way to scale a little bit faster if you're okay with, merchant fulfilling and you have the right products to merchant fulfill, where you might get your cash flow back, say in half, or not cash. Yeah, your cash back in half the time you would FBA, depending on, where it's getting sent to. If you can list that same day and maybe you're sending to a prep center that takes, or a warehouse, Amazon warehouse that takes 2 to 4 weeks to fully check in after FC transfer, you're saving yourself a ton of time. Amazon's still going to take the same amount of time after it sells to get you your money, depending on the pay cycle. But FBM can definitely get you the cash flow a little bit faster.
And I do want to just chime in. I think FBM could be more valuable earlier on a limited budget, But really, in my opinion, the beauty of Amazon is the FBA scalability, right? It's you can send in 100 units of a vitamin, not see it for a second, right? I definitely think yes, FBM could turn over your money quicker, but it comes down to like everyone's in different situations. I think the real game plan of if you're doing Amazon should be to FBA, in my humble opinion. Nothing wrong with FBM, and I still do it certain ones. And if you're on a limited budget or new, I get it. But like I would think lean into all the advantages of FBA whenever you're comfortable with that. To be honest with you.
Yep, I agree. Actually, Lover says, "What do you guys think about services like payability?" Not a huge fan. Not a huge fan. I don't know about you.
I mean, it really comes down to, for one, assuming I understand the business correctly, you basically get payouts a couple of days in advance. If you're that pinched, don't leverage yourself over leverage yourself that much. You know, I understand you can get yourself in a pinch accidentally. Something could go awry. Just say that I'd rather do this at a slower pace. You're just giving away money at that point, in my opinion, so.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. There's just a lot of risk involved, and you just want to make sure that. Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it. Just scale a little bit slower. Maybe you over leverage yourself too much, and you, just the next month you need to spend less, or reconsider loans, or whatever it is. But
yeah.
Patricia says, I watched a video from you guys today about the prep, and it gave me so much insight about it. Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. We did a lot of prep center talk last week. And if you guys are interested in that, definitely go check it out. Jay asks, what were best methods y'all used to stop order cancellations?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that, I think a couple weeks ago. One of the easiest, so first you have to, I'm not trying to I don't need the views or anything, but I actually interviewed Dave, who started OA Buddy, and we did a pretty thorough YouTube video on, first you have to understand, why is it getting canceled? It's not, every cancellation isn't created the same. So since we're just going to be brief here, I would say a couple of simple things. If you can ever use PayPal or Google Pay to check out, they're only seeing your delivery address. They don't see your billing address. So that's one really simple thing that does make a difference.
And just the reason that gets canceled when they have both is because a lot of times they require, or they want to see, if it's your first time ordering it or you're ordering in bulk, they want to see the shipping and the billing match. Right. And if you're sending to a prep center and your billing address is your home address, that's where the flag comes in. So using PayPal, they only get to see one address, so they can't cross, compare the two. I think that's why the PayPal works.
And a lot of cancellations, it's not because they're trying to prevent resellers. It could be trying to prevent fraudulent activity or scammers or whatever. So another thing, very simple, don't get overly excited. Keep an order to under $500 or something like that. See what happens. Do they cancel? Do they not? Then place another one. I think it comes again back to that slow and steady. It doesn't have to happen overnight. So just like you're test buying products to see if they sell or don't, you test buy from sites to see if they cancel or don't, right? And there's no secret formula. I assure you, there's nothing we could tell you that other outside of logic, probably, you can get into VPNs and stuff like that. I really don't. You just get used to the sites. I do use OA Buddy, which I think's been helpful at times. And you ask people in the community, and if you don't have that, just small test buys here and there.
Yep, I agree. Bruce, are you sourcing VAs from overseas? Both of mine are from the Philippines.
And I don't have any, but all of them seem to be from the Philippines for the most part. That's where the arbitrage makes sense. They get paid a good rate based on where they live, and it just seems to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
It is. That's the best way to explain it. Then Valerie says, hello, out of Cetaphil, Neutrogena, and Nivea, which brand from your experience would be good ungate first, since ungating can be expensive in the beginning? Thanks. I would say, is Neutrogena, is that one a brand that Amazon is regating, or is that, am I mistaken
I'm
on that?
not sure, to be honest with you.
Cetaphil, I have sold myself in the past, not recently, but I have sold it. And honestly, if you're really trying to get ungated and you have some brand and you're a little skeptical and you have some products that are profitable but they're more expensive, I mean, this is a simple method, but what you can do is basically find another SKU that's on Amazon and the website you're buying, and buy like one of the cheapest options, right? If you have like a chapstick that matches, even if you're going to break even on it, you buy those 10, you can sell them, you'll break even, but you're not going to spend more than 20 or $30 compared to maybe you're buying a lotion that's $30 each, spending 300 there. You're locking up capital, and you don't even know if you're going to get ungated. So, the goal is, for me, was to spend as little as possible to get ungated. And even if it means I'm going to sell it quick, break even, at least I'm ungated. Now I can buy those products that I know are more profitable. And it's just going to take that extra step. Bruce
Yeah.
says that's restricted. So Neutrogena maybe is restricted. I don't think the other two are, but I'm not sure on Nivea. I guess I can't speak on that. But I have sold Cetaphil in the past. Haven't had issues, but again, that's not fairly recently, not in the last 6 months, I don't think. So I would also double check that.
Yeah, I'm not well versed on the three of those, but yeah, I don't advocate for returning things, generally speaking. But like, if someone was truly in a pinch or really, really limited, and first off, I think we build up in our heads that ungating is going to solve our problems. If you're really on a pinch, I would just focus on other brands, to be very honest with you. And with time, you'll get ungated in a lot of things. Again, it's one of those things that kind of forces your hand to get good at sourcing other things. It's really easy when you're limited to be like, oh, if I was only ungated in this, I'd be doing better, right? We've all been there. But anyway, coming back to what I was saying, if there's like a big, like a Kohl's or someplace, I don't know, that you can get ungated and you can actually go return it in person or something like that, or just return it in general, I don't advocate for that. I really, really don't. But there are always outliers that if it didn't work for you, you could just return it, or I have an eBay account. The thing with ungating, as long as even if you lose a couple bucks, it could be worth it in the big picture too. So, I think there's ways to really minimize your risk when it comes to that.
Exactly. Seth, why am I not shocked?
Let me chime in on this for a second. I want to say there's not one way to do this. And I will say, like, I'm really proud of the amount of work I put in to get to this point. I mean, I source pretty much every day. And for me, every situation is different. But I do think, just from my viewpoint, think about this. I have a business outside of this, okay? If the number one person, if I were to hire somebody, I would be unrealistic, even if they were the best in the world. If they were a 75% version of me, I would be thrilled, because nobody's going to know and care about my business the way that I do. So if you don't even know how to source 40% ROI products yet, your VAs aren't going to be your saving grace. And they're only going to be a fraction of what you're able to teach them to do. And then I see people spending, I don't know firsthand, but like, I've seen people post before about like flexing that their VA handled their account health, which I think is great because it's a mundane task. But if you have to send 5 emails to your VA to explain what to do, it's quicker to just do it. You know what I mean? So I think for everyone's situation, time, capital, it's all different. But no VA is going to source better than me. I actually enjoy sourcing. I do it like 3 hours every day, first thing in the morning, like 6:30 in the morning. It's dopamine rush after dopamine rush. And at this point, like, I'm just in a groove. There's not a one size fits all. I do think, generally speaking, there's a misconception of how soon you need them, right? I think way more valuable is connecting with other Amazon sellers. Like, if I share a lead with Alex, right? His lead is going to be better 99% of the time than what any VA could send me, and vice versa. Like that to me is worth way more than having to manage somebody. And that's just like, yo, dude, here's a lead. If $500 for you. You'll send me one down the road too. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so not hating at all, but that's, I don't think it's another thing. Like, people can typically wait to do that as well. Like, become a good source. It all comes back to this: get good at sourcing. This entire business comes down to get good at sourcing. So I personally don't want to outsource something that I enjoy, but I'm good at, but also it's the meat and bones of the business. Anyone can figure out repricing. Anybody could figure out how to write fight account health issues. Like, sourcing is the name of the game. Like, that's the name of the game.
Yep. All right, we're going to answer a couple more questions in the chat, and then we're going to quickly brush over credit cards because we didn't get to talk about that, because there's, besides just the lending part of it, there's so much benefit to having credit cards and using that type of debt to scale. So we'll talk about that in a second, and then we'll wrap up the call here. So cool. Ed asked, what were your guys' monthly revenue before getting a prep center? That's a good question. I think it was less about revenue, more about the amount of time I was spending myself prepping. And that was taking over. Basically, I was, I'm working full time on my Amazon business. I didn't get a prep center until January of last year. And it was just, I was getting to a point where I felt like I was spending at least, I think I was tracking 12 to 15 hours per week prepping. So for me, that was 12 hours less of sourcing time that I had, because I had to basically designate almost 2 days, because it would get to a point where if I tried to do it all in one day, I was spending enough where it would take me all day to prep, and then I would have to make multiple trips to the post office because I had so many boxes. So broke it into two shipments a week, basically, which takes forever. And myself doing it by myself. And if you have limited space, right, that you have to, I had to ship 2 shipments a week anyway. So I just felt like I was wasting my time. I was doing things that a prep center could do, right, or where I should be sourcing more. So that was the switch for me.
I'm going to ballpark. I was probably at around 50K revenue months, not because that number matters so much, but that's just the time and the period. There was basically this tipping point. I never despised prepping and pack. Like, I would put on YouTube, it wouldn't be that big of a deal to me. You know what I mean? But it got to a point, was like, this is just taking up, it was very obvious. This is taking up too much time, too much physical space in my living quarters, right? And my time could be better spent. I have the capital, the time, and the skill set to source and or other things. So, why don't we just go about finding a prep center? And so it came very naturally. Like, yeah, it's just kind of like, you just knew. For me, it was like, it's time. It's time now. And I'm glad I did. There's pros and cons to all of it. I'll never probably be completely hands off, but I am more so now than I have been in the past.
And Ed, if you want a little more in-depth on that, we did talk a lot about prep centers last week. So check out our live from last week. And last question before we talk credit cards, Bruce asks, how much do I manage my VAs? That's a very in-depth question again, but I'll just quickly brief over it. The first week I've met with them every single day. So they would send me 3 to 4 leads. I would review every lead, whether it was good or bad, and give feedback on it. So they understand that the goal is to get your VA to understand your thought process on your leads as quick as possible. So, that whole first week, I just wanted them to get in the mindset of what I'm looking for, right? What products I'm just automatically saying no to, whether that's glass products, right? Whether that's too large of products, whether that's products that take a long time for me to prep, whether that's products like multi-packs, right? Maybe I don't like multi-packs because I can only send to a prep center, and they charge double for multi-packs, right? You just, whatever your situation is, you want them to understand what leads you're looking for as quick as possible. And then, then I was working with them every couple days, right? Reviewing their leads, trying to jump on calls as quick as possible. The time change is a little tough, but it's not, the end of the world. And then now I'm basically messaging them in Discord probably a couple days a week. If they have questions or if I have questions, which they've been working for me for a while. So it's not as, we don't have to meet as often, right? So you get more comfortable. They start to get better at finding leads. I mean, in the last, maybe the last 20 leads, I've only rejected 3 or 4. from my VA. So they're just better at, right? They just understand what I'm looking for. They might leave leads off the list that they would have put on there, months ago, but now they know I wouldn't preferably like that, or that keep a chart just isn't something that Alex would want. So we're going to leave it off the list. That kind of stuff. So communication, you got to have top tier because you want them to understand your thought process on sourcing as quick as possible. All right. So that was the questions. Jonathan, you want to jump into maybe just or I guess whatever you wanted to address about credit cards, because we both use them. I mean,
Yep.
The cash back, whether it's cash back, whether it's flight miles, right? There's just a bunch of different rewards credit cards, and there's definitely benefits to some versus others. There's actual credit cards. There's charge cards, which, maybe don't have a limit, but they have to be paid off more each month. So we can talk about a little bit about those.
Yeah. So I think the first thing to say is any form of debt can be used advantageously, or if used incorrectly, it could be crushing, right? Again, not financial advice or whatever the disclaimer is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's basically what I want to say. I have never, ever in any aspect of my life, and if you can, I would avoid at all costs paying credit card interest. Okay. That will bleed you dry. It just doesn't, it's not worth it. Right. Again, do other things before that. Grow slower. I mean, that's just, that can just crush you. Right. And I don't even think people fully understand how it works to some capacity, which I won't do an in-depth thing over. Just know it's it's an uphill battle. Right. Contrarily, if you're going to use, you might as well use a credit card because you can get rewards and cash back. I use a credit card that I get 2% cash back on every single purchase I make. And right now I'm spending anywhere from 40 to 50K a month. So let's just, for a round number, call that $1,000 a month for just going about my business. I don't factor this into my decision making. It's purely gravy. Literally today, because I don't want that number to get too high, again, just for mental peace, I have a check in the mail coming for $8,500. Okay. Straight from 2% cashback credit card. I pay it in full every single month. And that's it. And that's basically all I use for the Amazon business. I know everyone's in different situations. I wouldn't use a credit card beyond what you can pay with cash at the end of the month. I understand early on it's a balancing game, cash flow and this and that. But if things could happen, and I personally don't want to be in a situation, the one caveat, and this is not really advice I've thought of, is that a lot of Amazon sellers are really young, low barrier to entry, not a whole lot to lose. If you don't own a house and you don't have assets and you don't have kids, I'm not saying go bankrupt, but if there's ever a time in your life to risk it, it's your early 20s. Again,
oh yeah, big time.
Not advice, but you don't, when you have stuff to lose, I like to sleep well at night, and I want to know that I can pay my credit card bill at any point in time. Again, I'm a huge advocate for working a day job, building this up on the side, do what you have to do. I think this is an incredible opportunity. But I think people, especially as I get older, I'm 36, so many people are financially illiterate and irresponsible. Don't become one of those statistics. It's just not worth it. You can use it to its advantage, but if you don't know how to manage $100, you're not going to know how to manage 10,000, right? Used properly, it can be great, but be very careful.
Yeah. I mean, there's not really much more to say about that. I mean, you don't want, it's the same thing with the lending, right? If you're going to take a credit card and spend a bunch of money on inventory and you're not good at sourcing, right? You're going to have the same issue. You're going to owe 20 grand on the credit card, and it's going to be due on a certain day. And the items you buy, depending on how late in the pay cycle that you buy, you might not get that money back on those items to pay on that, to pay off what you purchased, basically. So, it's kind of I suggest, if you are using it, a slow build, right? Don't go and spend 30K the day you get the card. Maybe start with a couple thousand, know you can pay that off, then keep scaling the usage, as you're scaling the profits as well. That's a kind of a good way to again, be financially smart about it.
Yeah.
I have a credit card that allows me, that gets me flight miles. I don't have a cashback credit card. And I do have, I've flown probably 6, 7 times in the last year and a half, and I have not paid for one flight. So the benefits are awesome, right? As long as you're managing the card well, like we talked about. But yeah, whether it's the $8,000 in cash back, or you get, I have like 300,000 flight miles right now. Don't have any trips planned, but I can basically fly first class almost anywhere in the world if I wanted to. And just to have that option it's just a cool perk of, we're going to be spending on inventory anyways. Why not get rewarded a little bit extra for it?
Yep. And also something that you touched upon is actually, I think, really valuable. It's so simple, but it's so valuable. Timing your pay cycle is really valuable. So like, for a round number, if you spend your entire budget January 1 through 7, then you're not going to have to pay for that credit card until, the cycle, let's say, ends in February. So you're not going to have to pay it till March 1, right? Let's just say on the 1st, right? It ends on February 1, you owe it on March 1 type of thing. That's like very common.
Yep.
Contrarily, if I spend it on January 31st, I'm also going to owe that money on March 1st. So that is a difference of 23, 24 days of getting that money back quicker. So if you're responsible with it, I could even see having 2 credit cards with different staggered pay cycles. So you use one in the early parts, the first 2 weeks, let's say, and then the other one, and that gives you another 2 weeks now for those products you would have bought in the second half of the month, because to cash flow quicker, or not necessarily quicker, but better cash flow relative to when you're due come the credit card. Really simple, but makes a lot of sense.
You definitely want to be keeping track of that. You want to be on top of the finance if you're rotating, right? If you have different pay cycles, but yeah, just understand that the pay cycle is gonna, like, for me, I've kind of gotten to this point where I understand the pay cycle enough where, if it's like 2 days before it resets and the sales aren't going away, like, I might hold off a couple days if I know I'm going to spend $3,000. Right. Why spend it at the very end of the cycle when I could wait 2 days, still be able to spend that on the same exact inventory, right? The keep it chart still looks great. And then it's on the new cycle. So now I get basically an extra 30 days to pay off that inventory that I purchased. It's just being smart about it, right? That's the name of the game.
And I think that holds extra true for the products that, it's one thing if like the end of the month or the end of the cycle and it's like, oh, I know this is a bottom price on this sale, right? But if it's literally something that you're going to pay the same amount for in 3 days and it's not super pressing, just wait the 3 days. Unless cash flow truly doesn't matter,
Yep.
So,
but hey, that was pretty in depth on the credit cards. If you guys have any other questions, you can send us DMs on Instagram. You can comment on the live afterwards. We'll try to answer any questions. But 48 minutes in, I think we covered a lot of stuff. We talked about the credit cards. We talked about Amazon lending, pros and cons to taking loans or taking on debt in your business, and just how to be, as smart as you can to scale in a smart way, because you can scale really quickly, but that doesn't always mean the business is going to benefit more, right? That's kind of the simple way of saying that. So any last words before we wrap up, John?
I think just the common theme that I think about, just get good at sourcing. Get good at sourcing, then worry about the money, right? More money, bad sourcing doesn't equal a healthy business. Good sourcing with more money equals a very healthy business. So like, just be patient, put in your reps, and then the time will come and you'll know it and it'll make sense. And it doesn't have to be this scary, daunting thing either.
Yep. And if you've been listening the whole time and you kind of tuning in and out, if you take anything away, take away what Jonathan just said. That's super important. Beginners or pros, right? That is going to benefit you the most. The business will be the healthiest when you are at that stage. So
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thanks everybody for watching. We had a great time, answered a lot of questions. So thank you for the questions. And we will see everybody next week. We'll be probably right around the same time. We're getting into a nice weekly habit of getting on this live, but we'll have a new topic to talk about, which we'll announce on Instagram right before. But we'll see you guys next week.
Oh yeah, just real quick, if anyone has specific topics they want us to cover, hit us up too, because we're going to just continue to go down the list.
Exactly. Perfect.
So,
all right. See you, everybody.
All right, guys.